My mom was raised Catholic, and in the wake of having children, my grandmother became more and more devout. So when my mom was growing up, she didn't have these kinds of talks with her parents. I remember my mom telling me that she had to teach her sisters how to use tampons and pads because my grandmother couldn't bring herself to do it. So I'm really proud of my mom for having overcome that and taken that approach. And we had a really good relationship with regards to those early on. I like to tell people that even though I got my first sex talk at 4, the sex talk began at 4 and never really ended. My mom kept available. But over time, as I attended more Catholic school, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, I became more entrenched in the Catholic, inculcated is the word I was going for. I became more entrenched in the environment I was going to school in, the environment of my peers. And among my Catholic peers, their families had more of the traditional Catholic attitude towards our bodies and towards sex and sexuality. Those things are bad. Don't talk about them. Don't ask too many questions and feel shame. So as time went by and I was exposed to that at Catholic school, the conversations with my mother became less frequent. She was always available to me, but I stopped having questions for her. In 5th grade, my mom was notified at the beginning of the school year that this would be the year when they would teach us family living, which was what my school so referred to sex ed as. Instead of sitting back and letting the school take over, my mom went out and took action. She bought books, she read up, she educated herself, and she prepared herself to have these conversations with me, even in defiance of what I was learning during the day at school. And so I went to family living class, and as you might expect, it was bad. Abstinence only, breaking us up into gendered groups and not telling us any hint of what the other group was learning about. There was a lot of discomfort, and it was really confusing to have people speak in metaphor and not tell us the whole truth. For example, one time, my mom asked me after class, "What did you learn in family living today?" And I told her, "Well, today I learned I was uncircumcised." She did a double take. "You're circumcised, Brock. Where'd you learn that?" I'm like, "Well, they had this diagram." Wasn't a very good diagram, I guess. But she did. Every day after family living class, my mom picked me up from school and asked me what I learned for the day. And we talked about things, and she told me what she thought, even when it was in defiance of what I learned during the school day. For example, we had a section on birth control and how the pill is horrible for your body and it'll scar you for life, and most of the time it leads to you not being able to have children ever. And my mom told me quite frankly, "No, I've been on the pill for years, and then I had you, and then I was on the pill again, and then I had your brother, and it's fine." You know, she told me about some of the hormonal things that you get from it and educated me. A 5th grader learning these things. It was great. And the floodgates were, in a way, reopened that 5th grade year, and the conversations began. And I finished family living, and my mom stopped asking me at the end of the school day what I learned about sex that day. And I re-immersed myself with the environment of my friends. Then I kind of had 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. I was going through some hard times in my personal life, and through those, I clung to my Catholicism. It was kind of my own re-emergence into my Catholic identity. And with that, I not only approached sex and sexuality from a place of shame, but from a place of being the sort of person who guilts you for it. I was that Catholic. I was the Catholic who had opinions on these things, and I'll tell you what to feel bad about. And then in the 7th grade, we had another sort of family living class. But in this case, it was more about sex and less about our bodies, getting us ready for high school, for some of us getting us ready for public high school, where we were assured we would be faced with all sorts of temptations, and so much sin would surround us and be within our peers that we had to keep ourselves pure and prepare ourselves for this. So they taught us strict abstinence only. Abstinence is the only way. And they told us about all the horrible STDs you're going to catch. You ever seen Mean Girls? There's that famous sex ed talk in Mean Girls. Don't have sex. You'll get pregnant and die. Now here are some condoms. It was like that, but condoms will also kill you, was the gist of the story. By that time, the conversation with my mom had kind of died. So after school, after those classes, there was no, what did you learn today? Because at that point, I knew what I knew, and I knew what I thought. And I didn't have to go to my mom anymore. And even though she was always available, I had stopped asking questions. Then high school happened. And I always tell my deconversion story. I'll touch on it briefly. We did a ecumenism project in my freshman religion class. And we were each given a different world religion to study and then give a presentation about. I got Scientology. And I was reading about their beliefs and how fervently they believe these things. And it struck me that, wait, I've heard some of the same criticisms I have in my head right now directed at my Catholicism. Maybe the stuff I'm thinking is just as crazy to other people as this stuff is to me. And I went off and tried to learn more about the world and educate myself on matters of religion. And then I came across Hemant Mehta and Greta Christina and P.Z. Myers and Christopher Hitchens. And they opened my eyes not only to, what lies beyond Catholicism with regards to cosmology and the way of the world and morality, but also sex. Especially Greta Christina. We had her last year, and everybody can remember how excited I was to meet her. But it really is because she's so important to me in my development as a more well-adjusted person. That was my first exposure to sex positivity other than from my parents. And then I had my own little sort of sexual revolution. Dealing with the things that I'd heard about in high school, my peers had begun having sex. I finally had questions again. And at that point, who did I turn to but my mother? And since then, the conversation has stayed open. And her approach, her secular approach, her positive approach to talking to me about my body and everyone's bodies and sex and sexuality really pulled me back and undid a lot of the damage that was done by my Catholic school years. So what am I trying to say here? I came to this speech not as an expert or a blogger or somebody who knows a lot. I'm a student. I don't have too many stories. But what I do know I can talk about is me. So I told this story, and the point I want to illustrate is that what we're doing here works. The sex-positive social justice warrior movement that we're part of and that we're trying to promote here today works. Because all of this conversation, we start talking about sex, and we start putting out media about sex positivity. One of these days, it's going to reach a single Catholic mother, and it's going to click, and she's going to talk to her son. And, she was raised by the 1980s media, the liberty that began to take hold in youth pop culture back then with sexual liberty. And she bought into the progressive parenting stuff in the 90s. And those books that she bought back when I was going into family living in 5th grade, nowadays, people are going to be Googling things, which is why I laud all of the sex-positive bloggers out there and encourage all of us to do the same sort of thing with our speech and with our activism. Because we do reach people. We have reached people in the past. I can speak for myself. So one day, the work we're doing here could end up helping a kid like me. And that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.